Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth part of our tutorial series TyFLOW for ArchViz. In this one, I would like to show you how you can create some light chains like you can see here in this scene. And we will do that using TyFLOW and make it really procedural. You put it aside and then jump right into 3ds Max. The easiest way to do that is by creating a line, just a straight line here, and we're going to use this one as our emitter. So we add TyFLOW and then go right to the steps, to the time step, and set it to half, and then open the editor. Let me go and change the color of this line so we can see that better. And now we can use a bird spline that allows us to select the spline and then emit particles all along that spline. Now let me go and hide it so we can just see the dots here. Change it to the large dots and set it to 2. So here we are with our particles. And now that we have them, we can do all sorts of good things to them. So we're gonna go and add a force operator here, give it some gravity. Now they're gonna fall down to eternity. But let me go and add a collision operator here and enable ground collider. So when they are falling, they're just sitting on the ground. And when we go to the force and add some noise, that will show you that those things are not connected to each other. They are loose and each one is just going in separate directions. We have to bind them together. And we're going to go and use the so-called particle bind operator right after the bird spline. And then go down, check on show binding, then disable proximity bind and go to family bind and then set it to bind to siblings. That will show you this connection right now that you see, and that indicates that all the particles are now linked together. So when we go and let them fall now, you see that they are connected and they are moving like they would create a rope or something like that. And this is exactly what we need. So what we don't need is all of them falling down. We want them to hang. So the first and the last one should actually stay in place, and the rest should work with the gravity and all the good things we have. So let me go to the gravity again or to the force again and set the strength back to 0 so we don't need noise actually. And I'm gonna go and add a so-called property test operator here. And we're gonna test the sibling type and say if it is the first sibling, then send it to this event. Let me go and change that to 2 as well. So, and that color maybe to something yellowish. So we see the particle here. So it is the first one here, goes to that event. We want it to get deactivated. So we use a particle switch. We deactivate it so it is not actually acting to any kind of force or whatever we have in our scene. And then we have to stop them so they don't move, they don't fall, they don't do anything. So they're just sitting here. This is done for the first one. So when I move it now, only this will stay in place and the rest will fall down like a hanging rope. So that is now what happens. So we have to do that for the last one as well. So I'm going to go copy this one and then right click and paste, bring it down, then go and set it to the last and link it to the same event. So now the first and the last one will get stopped and deactivated, so the rest will just hang as we want them to be. So now let me bring these guys above the force and that's working pretty good. So we can go and disable the display here. We don't have to see them. We can also go to the particle bind and disable show binding. So now we can see that there is actually no spline in here. They're just bind together, but we don't see the spline. In order to see that binding, we need to add the spline paths into our scene and then go and change it to particle bindings. So it will use the bindings of our particles here and create a spline. So we go and create new. Now we get that line again. It is not renderable, so we have to activate this TyFLOW measure I, so we see the thickness of it and everything. And we have to go to TyFLOW here, make sure that well bindings is activated, otherwise it will be edgy and those segments will not be connected to each other. So that is now our wire or rope. So we go and move this. This is what we have. Now we need some light bulbs hanging on this wire. So we can use the shape modifier for that. So here, add a shape modifier right below the property test and everything. And I'm gonna go and remove this one and use one of my light bulb models here. So I'm gonna select this guy, add selected, and when I go and change the display mode to geometry, I'm gonna see all my light bulbs here. So now that works fine so far. And I can go and do some changes. Let's say the first thing we're gonna need is scale. So we can change the scale of our light here. We can set it to 180 or something, or I don't know, 140. Make them bigger or smaller or whatever you want. And we also don't want that all of the particles are becoming a light bulb. We need maybe each second or each third of them to be the bulb, and then we need a bigger gap between them. So we can go to the shape operator, activate filters and enable filters, add a new one, and then change the type here to every nth, which is down here. So every number. And that means if you go here and set it to 2, it will take each second particle and turn it to that shape mesh what you have selected in this list. And if you go to 3, it selects each third one, and so on and so forth. So that is how we can control the gap between them. The amount of the lights, that becomes a little bit tricky using this technique. You can go to bird spline here, and the percentage gives you the amount of emitted particles along this path. So when we go and change it to 3, we're going to have more particles. Okay, that all works when we have one single line only and a connected line only. So when I go to my spline and then add edit spline on top of it, let me just get rid of TyFLOW so you can see what I'm doing. So we have just a line here. Now I can go to the whole segment, hold down shift and drag it out. So I have 2 segments right now. So when I go back to my TyFLOW, that is what happens. And everything works fine. And I can move that independently. So they are one thing. So I have to go and edit the line and do this. This is what happens. That seems to work fine. But the problem starts when I go and change the length individually. So when we go here and select these vertices, move it here, and then update mouse setup, you see there is a big difference between these two now. So by going change the amount here, I always have a bigger gap here than here. And this is not something that I want to have or to deal with, because right now I would have to go and separate that line and create a new one and create a new setup and make sure that these are looking the same and so on. So it is kind of an inefficient way to work actually. So, and it becomes boring. It makes you tired when you have a big scene to work on. So that thing works fine when you have just a wall or just one line or maybe two lines separated somewhere and you're gonna have some decorations on the wall or something. That method works pretty fast and it is still very usable. But when we have different stuff and when we want to have different positioning and being free to move around and so on, that will not work the way we want it to. So if I go and change this like that, then it starts to become crazy. So there is no way to go and equalize them easily. But we can achieve that with another way. We can create it in a little bit more complex way, maybe, but it will give us much more freedom to work with. And then let me show you what I mean by that. Let me just create a new TyFLOW setup right in here. And for this setup, I'm going to use some helpers. So those will be my emitters. So I'm going to add a helper here and just rename that to helper A, for example. And let me go and place it somewhere minus 100, maybe 0, and then 100 up here. And clone this as an instance. Call it B, and then OK, and set that to 100. So now what I can do is go and just add a regular birth operator here. Set the starting point for now to 0. We're going to change it. And the end to 0 as well. And the total amount of particles we want to be generated is just one single particle. So I'm generating one single particle. And then I go and say, I want to generate it from the position object. And this is my object. And I want it from its pivot. And I want to see a large dot here and make that again bluish. So this is now the particle which got generated. Let me just remove that. That is that one. And after generating this, I'm going to send it to a new event. And in this one, I'm going to add a object bind operator and select my helper A again. And make that maybe red or something. So now it is red. It is in this event and it is bind on this object here. So when I move it, it goes with it. Now, from here, I need another particle going to this guy and make a connection. For that, I'm going to use spawn operator. And what the spawn operator does is it is generating or emitting particles from existing particles. So we have one particle here that we generated, and now we spawn another particle, and you see here the particle amount went up to 2 because we spawn just one single offspring. So when I change it to 10, we're going to see the amount of particles jumping up to 11 because we have one coming from this event, the original particle that we generated, and send it out to this one, sent here. So when I remove it, or when I disable spawn, you're going to see the particle amount goes down to 1 because this is the original which is sent to this one. Now here is 0 and here's 1. And this particle emits now 10 other particles. So we have 11. But we don't need 10. We only need 1. And we want that spawned particle to go to another event. So we're going to send it to a new event. And in this event, it should go and search for a target. So we go and add find target operator into here, and we select our second helper as our target. So we don't see the particle reaching that thing here because we have to move our CTI. So then it moves and then it does some weird movement and then sits right in the middle of that object. But what I want to do is having it right away at this place without bubbling and doing stuff. So in order to achieve that, we're going to bring up the velocity to about 500 and acceleration to 100%. So it is actually there right away if you wish, but it has to go about 1 or 5 frames forward in order to reach that center. And I don't want to move my CTI all the time to make that happen. And this is why I said we're going to change the start amount or value here, and we're going to set it to -25. So it starts at -25 frames. When it reaches 0, that thing is already there. So that's the best way to make it happen as fast as possible, or just right away. So now what we have done is we sent that new generated or birth particle to this event, and now it is searching for a target. It finds its target, and after that we have to send it to another new event and bind it again, and this time we're going to bind this particle to this helper, and we're going to set the size here again to 3 so we can see that. Let me go and make that red as well. So now we have those red particles. Both are sitting in place and linked to the helpers. So now we need to link them together again, so to bind those together. So we're going to use again particle bind, and this time we go and disable proximity bind again and go to the family bind, and if we go and say bind to siblings like last time we did, nothing happens. So let me actually change this color so I can explain it or show it better to you what is going on. So now we have a green one and a red one here. That green one is now the child of this red one because we used the spawn to generate a particle out of existing particle. So that existing particle is the red one, and then we generated another one using spawn operator out of that one. So this new one becomes the child of that red one. And now we have to go to the particle bind and say we don't want to have the siblings together, we want to bind it to our parent. And this is what now allows us to have this binding. Just for your understanding what parent and child means. That is why I explained it to you, right? Just like that. So after binding them, we have to generate some particles between these two. And for these, we're going to use the so-called resample operator, which does exactly this. And now it is using the siblings again. We don't have any. We don't want to go and use the parent and children method here because we have that in our binding, and we're going to go and just use the particle bind. And that generates these particles between those two that we have. Now we can go and send those out to a new one and add a force operator in here. Let me make this bigger. And now when we go and set our gravity to something, you see that our first and last particles are fixed in place, and the other new resampled particles are acting to the force, which is awesome. Now, from here, we go and send these guys to a new event. And gave him a shape. I'm going to use my light bulb here again. So remove this, select that one, add selected, and then set this to geometry. Gonna add a scale operator here. So I can scale them up. And when I want to change the amount of them, I have to go back to the resample and then change that percentage or threshold. So this is how we can do this. And in order to change the gap between them, we can go back to shape, filters, enable, add, and then change this to every nth, and then change it to 3 or something, or 2, or whatever you wish, and that will give you the amount of the, or change the amount of the light bulbs or the shapes that are appearing here. And we also need the same force so that that thing is hanging. So the good thing about this method now is we can really freely go and just move that guy wherever you want, and everything will really change the way it should. So the gaps will be always the same, and you are really flexible to change it and place it wherever you want. You can go up and down and everywhere. This is a way more flexible way to work or create something like this. Now we have just two helpers here. What if we want to go and make a zigzag, like a Z or like a, whatever shape you want? So you can just go and shift drag this helper, make an instance. And now thanks to our setup that we did kind of a little bit complicated or complex, maybe it looks like, but it isn't. So we can go and see what really happened. So here we emitted, then we spawned, we found our target, and then we sent that to a new event where it will get bind, and then it goes to these two events where it has its gravity for the rope or for the wire and for the shapes and stuff. So this is what's happened. What we can do now is just go copy these two, which is event 5 and 6 now, so where the target is and the event after that. So just select both of them and right click, copy, paste. Now go to that event, the event number 6, and underneath of our resample, we're gonna add another spawn operator. Right click, switch output side so it goes out this way, and then connect that one to the new event that we just paste or copied. And then we go to find target. We have to change this target, remove it, and then pick this one. And we have to go and bind this also to the new object. So now as you can see, it moves from here to here, just to the next target. And now in order to see the bulbs and everything, we have to go and connect the resample again to this event where the first one goes, and this is our setup for the next chain of lights. So it's actually pretty simple. So what we did is just copy these two events where your target is in it and the next one, and then add a new spawn operator after the resample in your first event, number 6. We have 2 of them right now. And then link this to these copies that you made. Make sure that you select the new object as your target and as your object bind object, and you send it back to this event where it acts to the force and it becomes the light bulb. And we can repeat this endlessly. So now we can just drag out another one. Now we go and copy these two again. So copy, paste, move it down. Underneath of the resample, we go and spawn a new particle. Right click, switch output. Link this output to that new event you copied. Make sure the new target is the new object, and also our object bind should be the new one, and we have to go and link that now to this event up there. The reason we don't see it, by the way, is we have to move that. You see, there's nothing wrong. I just forgot to tell you. So we go to -50, so it will start 50 frames before. So then we see that, so we don't have to move CTI again. So I hope it didn't irritate you right now. And this is how we can set up different placeholders, say, or connections. Now they are hanging too extreme, maybe, and they are wobbling too much and so on. So to fix the wild wobble at the end, we're gonna need just a slow operator here and down here in these both events where we have the gravity. So, and that will help with those wild movements at the end. And if you want to have it more stiff and not that much hanging, you can just go to TyFLOW itself and change the steps, so that will make it more stiff, or that will actually retain the shape much better and gives you more accurate results. And this way you can control how much it hangs. You have also down here the solver settings that you can change. So if, let's say, if you go to 2 and then you set it to 250, that will stiff them a little bit as well. but it takes longer to calculate everything. So that is the better way. Go to 1/4 or whatever. So if you go lower, so 1/8 or something, that is even more straight. So you can play around with that and find what is working best for you and for your scene. This is actually it. This is how we can create the light chains and all the good stuff. And the next thing is just adding the materials to them. By the way, the materials, you can go to the shape and then scroll down here and say instance material, inherit from reference. So you don't have to go and add extra materials to TyFLOW or whatever. Then that is actually our setup for the lights. So the next thing we want to add to them is, of course, the splines, so we can see what is going on. So here we need the spline path again, and we're going to create a new one, and we're going to use particle binds. And make the tie spline appear for both of them. So actually we can get rid of it here. Then we can go and change the thickness of it, set it to 1 centimeters maybe if you're in a far distance, so you can see everything much better. Let me go back to TyFLOW. There we go. Now we have everything the way we want it, so we can be free to move around, link those things to something, and everything changes. All the distances are recalculated accordingly to where the positions are, and it's not a pain to change positions or the amount of the lights or whatever. And again, if you want to change the gap between them, just think about it. Go to shape. We have this filter here that is giving you the gap distance between all the lights or the bulbs here. You can change this, you can set it to 1, so each one is just a light. So just play around with the settings and have fun with your setup. And then that is what I ended up to create with this setup, and I was pretty happy with the results, and I'm really free to move everything around and do whatever I want to do. And these are other examples that you can see. I found them online. These are not done with TyFLOW or something. These are real photographs, and these are just pictures to show you what could be done or where could it be a useful scenario to work like this. That would be awesome to create with. You can go decorative and create stuff like that and all sorts of things. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful and useful to you, and I will see you in the next part of our tutorial series, part 5, and I'm wishing you a great and successful time. Bye bye.